Dry Creek sat under the weight of the sun, like a secret the desert was trying to forget. A crooked line of weather-warped buildings marked the town's single street, flanked by dust-blown storefronts and shuttered windows. Stray dogs trotted with no purpose, and the only tree in town leaned like it was tired of standing. Folks here spoke in low tones, not out of caution, but because there never seemed much worth raising a voice over. Clara Tate walked that street with a quiet that made others uncomfortable. She wore black even though her mourning was nearly 2 years old, the hem of her skirt always dusted in sand and gravel. Her boots were scuffed, her hands roughened by the soil she worked. The townspeople nodded politely when they passed her. Some even offered a soft ma'am. But they kept walking. Everyone knew what had happened to Jonah Tate. Everyone knew what Clara had lost. But knowing didn't mean caring. She lived alone on a fading stretch of land 2 miles past the last saloon. Her house was plain but sturdy, the fence mended often, though never straight. A lone windmill creaked in protest with every gust, and the well beneath it had gone dry last summer. Her crops weren't much more than yellowed stalks and wishful thinking. Still, she kept planting. She was not a woman to give up, though life had tried again and again to make her. Jonah had been gunned down outside Bell's General Store. 6 shots, 2 to the back. The rest wasted in him after he was already down. Sable Jack and his men had ridden through, looking for easy coin and a reason to frighten. Clara had run to him, knees hitting the dirt, blood pooling in the folds of her dress. The sheriff came 10 minutes later, drunk and swaying. He muttered something about justice and buried his shame in the bottle. Since then, Clara had spoken to no one unless she had to. Her voice, when she used it, was low and even, like a woman who had measured every word and found most of them lacking. Some said she was cold. Others said she was cracked in the head from grief. The truth was simpler. Clara knew the world had little to offer her but work, silence, and the memory of the man they'd taken. Then came the stranger. He arrived on a pale roan horse, with eyes like cooled ash. No one saw where he'd come from, only that he wasn't there, and then he was. He rode slow, took in the town like he was measuring it against something he'd seen before, and found it coming up short. He wore no badge, carried no bags, and spoke only when pressed. Folks asked his name. He gave them Finn. He rented the upstairs room at the saloon, paid in silver coins that bore the face of no president anyone could name. The barkeep asked where he got them. Finn just smiled like he knew better than to explain. He didn't drink much, but he listened plenty, watched people more than he talked to them, watched Clara most of all. He saw her, truly saw her, the way a man might study a riddle scratched into rock. He noticed her limp, the way she used her left hand for the heavy lifting even though her right looked stronger. He watched her hitch her old mule to a crooked cart, haul feed bags half her weight, stand straight even as the wind tried to bend her. He never approached her. Not at first. One morning, Clara found a sprig of desert bloom, yellow, defiant, set on her porch rail. No note, no explanation. Just a bit of beauty where there hadn't been any. She looked out across the dry field, saw nothing but wind and fence post. She picked it up, turned it in her fingers, and placed it in a chipped jar by the window. The second time, the bloom came with a coil of wire and fresh nails. The week before, her fence had blown loose again. That afternoon, while Clara brought water from the creek in battered pails, Finn fixed the fence. Never spoke a word about it. People started whispering about the way Finn sat outside the saloon with his chair tipped back, eyes scanning the hills. About the way he cleaned his revolver every morning like a ritual. About how he never flinched when Sable Jack's name was mentioned. One evening, as the sun burned low and the wind kicked up dust from the canyon, Clara saw him standing by her gate. He didn't move, just stood there, hat in hand, waiting like a man asking for a kind word he didn't deserve. She didn't speak, only looked at him, long and hard. Then she nodded once and turned back inside. From then on, the desert watched as something unspoken began to rise. A tension threaded through still air, wound tight between two people who had long ago stopped expecting the world to offer anything but pain. Finn began walking past her ranch at dusk, slow and deliberate. Clara left her porch lantern lit, even when the night was clear. No one said it aloud, but the town of Dry Creek began to feel something shifting, something low and quiet, like thunder behind the hills. And while no one cared that Clara was still hurting, had never truly cared, one man watched, waited, and made his silent vow. He would care, even if it killed him. Sable Jack Crowder rode with a grin like a fresh wound, wide, red, and never healed right. He was the kind of man who treated silence like weakness and laughter like a weapon. Folks in Dry Creek had learned to lower their eyes when he passed, learned not to stand too close to their own doors when his boots hit the porch. His stallion was jet black, tall and mean-eyed, matching the man who rode it. He and his gang came down from the Mesa Ridge every few weeks, dust rolling before them like a storm that couldn't make up its mind. They drank what they wanted, took what they pleased, and left behind wreckage shaped like warnings. 6 of them rode with Sable now. Men with names whispered over cards and cheap whiskey. Clay Murrow, who'd slit a throat just to watch the steam rise. Jessup and Brant, half-brothers with one brain between them and a knack for fire. Hank Bluecoat Marner, a deserter with a scar over his eye and a Union saber at his belt. Deke Taro, silent and twitchy, always touching the hilt of his knife. And young Sam Daughtry, who still flinched when the shooting started, though Sable swore he'd come along fine. They'd killed Jonah Tate because he didn't step aside fast enough. Shot him like a practice target. Laughed as Clara screamed. The sheriff watched it all from behind the saloon's swinging doors and never once drew his iron. That's when Sable knew he owned the town. Fear was the only currency he respected, and Dry Creek had paid in full. Clara never forgot, never forgave, but she stayed silent, rebuilding what she could, wearing her pain like armor. The town pitied her in that helpless, coward's way, like watching a barn burn from across the road, too afraid to throw water. When the Sable gang rode in next, the town braced. The saloon filled quick. Doors shut. Children were pulled off porches. Sable tipped his hat like a man attending a wedding, not a raid. He didn't announce his presence. He didn't need to. That afternoon, Clara stood at the edge of her field, checking the few rows of beans that still dared to grow. Dust rolled in ahead of the horses, and before she could turn, they were on her. Sable dismounted slowly, brushing grit from his coat, eyes fixed on her like she was livestock to be weighed. "Mrs. Tate," he said, voice oily, too soft for the heat in his stare. "Still playing house out here on your own?" Clara didn't answer. Her jaw tightened, but her hand stayed steady on the hoe. Behind him, the gang snickered. "Now, I've been thinking," he went on. "This land's not worth much, sure, but it's something. You live out here alone, no help, no law. Must be hard." He stepped closer. "I could make it easier. You let us stop by from time to time. Use your barn. Maybe borrow a little warmth when it's cold." His meaning hung in the air like a rattlesnake's rattle. Clara met his eyes. "Get off my land." The laughter stopped. Sable's grin didn't fade. He moved fast, faster than she expected. The back of his hand cracked across her face and sent her to the dirt. Dust clung to her dress. Blood bloomed on her lip. Her hat tumbled off, and the wind dragged it across the field. He loomed over her, shadows dancing across his boots. "That's your only warning, widow. Next time, we don't ask so polite." He mounted up and rode off, leaving Clara on her knees, staring at the horizon as if it owed her something. Finn had watched from the ridge. He'd come to check the fence he'd helped mend, but stayed when he saw the dust rising. His jaw locked. His fingers twitched. When Sable struck her, he took one step forward and stopped. He wasn't ready. Not yet. That evening, Finn came to her porch. He didn't knock. She sat in the doorway, lantern flickering beside her, lips swollen and purple. She looked up, unsurprised. "I should have killed him," he said. "You die," she replied, voice hoarse but calm. He sat on the steps beside her, silent for a long time. Then, "You ever seen a man shot at close range?" She didn't answer. "I have," he said. "Seen a boy no older than 15 take one through the neck. Didn't know whether to scream or die. He did both." Finn leaned forward, hands clasped between his knees. "I used to ride with a crew like his. Thought I was doing what a man had to, just to stay alive. Then I saw a church burn with women locked inside it. I left that night. Been running ever since." Clara looked at him sideways, as if trying to peel back the layers of dust and silence. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because next time he lays hands on you, I won't be able to stop myself. And you deserve to know why." She said nothing, only stared into the lantern's flame. The silence stretched long, but not empty. The next morning, the town found Clara at the general store, her eyes still bruised. She moved slow, but upright. Finn stood by the door, arms crossed, saying nothing, but his gaze dared anyone to whisper. Dry Creek had never seen a man like him. He wasn't a hero. He wasn't Law. But there was something in the way he stood near Clara, like a tether had been strung between them, that no gang could cut. The wind picked up again that afternoon. Dust swept through the town like a warning. Somewhere out in the hills, Sable Jack was laughing, but not for long. The storm began not with thunder, but with smoke. A thin column first, rising from the north ridge, where the pines gave way to brittle grass. By mid-morning, the sky darkened above Dry Creek like dusk had arrived early, and the scent of scorched earth rode the wind. Fire, unnatural and fast-moving, climbed toward the town with a hunger that didn't pause for windbreaks or water lines. Clara stood at the edge of her field again, this time with a rifle in her hands and her sleeves rolled to the elbows. She had no cattle to drive, no barns worth saving, but the house, the porch, the hard-fought rows of beans and squash. She'd built it all after burying her husband. She wouldn't let it vanish while she still drew breath. Finn arrived as the second plume curled toward the southern slope. He didn't speak, just slid off his horse and checked the horizon with squinted eyes. "They said it," he said flatly. "Drove it here on purpose. That's not wildfire. That's a message." She already knew. The fire wasn't to destroy the town. It was to flush them out. By noon, the first of the gang rode in through the smoke. Jessup and Brant, bandanas over their mouths, rifles slung loose. Their horses snorted, skittish in the heat and ash. Behind them, the others fanned out. Sable wasn't with them yet, but his signature was on the wind: chaos, fire, and fear. The sheriff made a show of stepping into the street, pistol holstered, badge tilted on his chest like it might mean something. "This ain't your land, boys," he called, voice thin against the crackle of flame. Clay Murrow shot him clean through the neck. The sheriff staggered, clawed at blood, and dropped in the dust without a word. From her porch, Clara saw the law die and didn't flinch. Finn touched her arm. "You need to go now." "I'm not leaving. I'm not asking," he said. She turned to him, eyes like tempered glass. "This is my land." Finn held her gaze a moment longer, then nodded. "Then we hold it." They worked fast, barricaded the windows, set buckets by the doors, covered the porch steps in oil-soaked rags. Finn had Clara nail slats across the front entry and climbed to the roof with her rifle. He moved with the precision of a man who had seen the end of things before and survived them barely. By the time Sable Jack arrived, the sun was a red coin in a haze-choked sky. He rode at the front of his gang, grinning as if he were attending a homecoming dance. Behind him, the flames painted everything in flickering orange, like hell had come early and needed no invitation. "Widow Tate," he shouted from the gate, voice rich with mockery. "You up there, darling? I brought the boys. Figured we could warm ourselves by the fire together." A shot cracked from the rooftop, missed his shoulder by inches. Sable's grin dropped. Finn stood in the doorway, rifle leveled. "Next one's for your throat." The gang spread out, taking cover behind troughs and fence posts. Finn moved like a ghost between shadows, counting bodies, tracking every flicker of movement. Clara reloaded with calm hands, eyes sharp and cold. The first outlaw to breach the porch caught a slug in the chest. Brant tried the back door and left a trail of blood across the kitchen wall. Jessup got close enough to toss a lantern through a window, but Clara shot the glass out before it landed. They came hard after that, for at once, shots rang out like dry thunder, echoing across the flatland. Smoke curled in through the walls, mingling with sweat and gunpowder. Clara coughed once, wiped her brow, and fired again. Then came the scream, a raw, gurgling cry that ended too fast. Geek Taro hit the ground near the gate, a knife still half-drawn. Finn stood over him, revolver smoking. His face was blank. Death didn't move him, not anymore. By the time only Sable was left, the sun had dropped behind a ridge, and the flames had crept dangerously close to the fields. Clara climbed down from the roof, rifle still in hand, eyes scanning for the devil she'd waited 2 years to face. He came slow now. No swagger, no grin, just fury wrapped in sweat and dust. "Thought you were just a broken little thing," he muttered, circling wide. "But you've got bite, I'll give you that." Clara raised her rifle. Sable's hand went to his hip. Finn stepped between them. "No," Clara said, voice like a whip crack. "This is mine." He hesitated, then nodded once and stepped aside. Sable sneered. "You gonna shoot me, widow? After all we shared?" She didn't answer, just pulled the trigger. The shot hit him low, right above the hip. He staggered, cursed, reached for his gun, but her second shot took him in the chest. Sable Jack Crowder dropped to one knee, then fell sideways into the dust, eyes wide, mouth slack. It was done. The fire crept to the fence line and stopped. Wind shifted. Smoke thinned. Somewhere behind them, the town began to emerge, quiet, stunned. Finn looked to Clara. She stood tall, gun lowered, breath steady. "You all right?" he asked. She didn't answer. He waited. At last she said, "Now I am." And for the first time in years, she meant it.